Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel. On this video, I'd like to talk about a story about the other sunken ships, other famous ships, that is, that were just like the Titanic. Like, for those who have seen my last video about the Titanic, and like why it still sank even though it was considered to be unsinkable, well, some people may think that the ships that I'm going to talk about now may actually be better than Titanic, but in fact they're actually not. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you this book, Ghost Liners. Now it's not about ghost ships or anything. They call it Ghost Liners because this is about famous ships such as Titanic itself and other famous ships that were similar to it or just like it, that have just been sunk for many years. So with this one, this book does tell a little bit about the Titanic, but we're gonna skip that part and just see those other three ships I'm talking about. Like, if you see on the back, you'll see which ones I'm talking about. These ones are the Lusitania, the Britannic, and the Andrea. There's one that's missing on here called the Empress of Ireland. So we'll get into that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just give me 1 sec, please. Here we are. Okay. Now, the Empress of Ireland. Now, this ship, took place 2 years after Titanic sank. And they say that this ship was supposed to be safer than Titanic, even though, it wasn't as big as Titanic, because you can see in the picture that it only has 2 funnels instead of 4 like Titanic did. But like Titanic, it does have the watertight compartment doors, to stop the flooding. But unfortunately, even with this ship, though, this ship sank in only 14 minutes. I mean, and with a big ship, people may ask, how come this ship actually sank so fast? Well, we'll get into that in just a second. Just because, the Empress of Ireland was considered safer than Titanic, it doesn't actually mean it can stay afloat longer than Titanic, or it's just as long. Because even a big ship such as Titanic could even sink in 14 minutes, because it depends on how bad the damage can be and all that, and how it happened. And you'll see later on, and you'll see in the book why it sank so fast, and I'll explain it. So, okay. Now on this page over here, you will see that the picture right here is the Empress of Ireland sinking. It's tipping over and all that. And you're wondering, how this happened. Well, if you look on this page right here, you'll see, how the Empress of Ireland sank and what was the cause of it. So, if you look down here, the Empress of Ireland collided with another ship called the, what is it called? The Store Stack. Sorry, I almost forgot the name. It's Store Stack. So, and the thing is that they were both in really thick fog, so they couldn't see where they were going. Even though they had fog lights, like the red and green lights, to warn other ships that they're around the area, but still, they still collided and all that, because the Empress of Ireland was trying to dock so it doesn't collide with the other ship, the Store Stack, or Star Stack, or whatever. and what happened is that, the ship, that hit the Empress of Ireland, hit the middle of the ship, in between the 2 funnels of the ship, and which made a huge hole, which flooded the ship in minutes. And not just that, it made a tip on its side. and the Empress of Ireland had 32 lifeboats, more than enough for, every passenger, I guess, more than Titanic did. But unfortunately, only 5 of its lifeboats were able to be launched because the ship was sinking so fast that hardly enough boats got away. And because it was tipping on its side, say, here's the Empress of Ireland, and this is the store stack. So the store stack was, hitting the side of Empress of Ireland. And when the Empress of Ireland got struck, it was tipping on its side, which made the lifeboats on this side, couldn't use those lifeboats because the ship was unbalanced. When it tips over like that, lifeboats can't be launched properly, or can't be launched at all because they're not balanced, because passengers can just fall right out of the boats, get dumped out. And it's a very dangerous thing. And even though Empress of Ireland did have its watertight doors, but they weren't closed when the ship got hit, though. And they should have done that. But even with a big hole like that, though, it still probably wouldn't have survived, though. Because it was, a lot of damage on the ship. And, that doesn't, just because a ship, changes, that doesn't mean it's better. Because the story is also about, how some of these ships change and all that. And, and shows proof that just because a ship has better, upgrades on it or features, that doesn't mean it actually is the safest thing to sail on. Because even ships like Titanic can still sink, even if they're considered unsinkable. Like I said in my last video about Titanic. Because every ship is going to sink, no matter what happens, and no matter what features they have. I mean, depends on how damaged they are, too. If it's too severe, then it's gone. Just like when you tow a car. If your car is too damaged, like the engine is completely destroyed, then the car is gone. It's completely destroyed, and you can't save it. That's just how it is. But anyway, so, with Empress of Ireland, a lot of people did not survive this. And if I remember correctly, I think, 1,000 something perished during the sinking. Well, especially because it was going too fast. So, that's just how it happens. On this page, you can see the wreckage of the Empress of Ireland. It's not a very pleasant sight to see, though, because, it's been in the water for many years, Sad seeing a beautiful ship like that, other than Titanic. It's a shame, though. But it happens, though. Anyway, now, on to the next ship. Now, this one was actually a victim of World War I. And for those who don't know what this one is, this is called the Lusitania. Now, the Lusitania, in those days, this was one of the fastest ships in the world at that time. And, other than Lusitania, its sister ship, Mauretania, was also as fast as this ship, too. So that means they were faster than Titanic and, other ships of this size or so. And not just that, they both had 4 propellers instead of 3 propellers in the back of the ships. The propellers actually make the ship move and all that stuff, which made them go faster than average, especially when they're at full speed, and all that good stuff. But unfortunately, even for a fast ship like Lusitania, they were trying to, get away from, an attack from a submarine, a German submarine, that is. Because, they were sailing towards, an area where submarine was, because, the countries were at war at that time. And this took place in 1915 when the ship sank, as you can see on the date over here. If you look closely, you can see the day of when the ship was attacked. So what happened is that the captain of the Lusitania was warned, from the government that, submarines can be attacking ships anytime, especially a passenger ship. And they thought, the Germans thought that Lusitania was like a warship. Well, kind of, looked like one a little bit, but they didn't realize it was actually a passenger ship. And they thought that the Lusitania also had ammunition on it and all that. But unfortunately, not everyone in the war followed those rules, And so when Lusitania tried to, reach land, they didn't realize that they were going in going in a bad course. And they headed towards the submarine. And the submarine was able to catch up with the ship. And when the captain saw the Lusitania, he ordered to fire a torpedo. And as you can see in this picture right here, you'll see that there's water coming out. That's because a torpedo has just hit the ship. And now Lusitania does have, watertight compartments too. But by the time the torpedo hit, though, they pretty much, didn't stand a chance, though, because they didn't close the watertight doors before this even happened. And I'm pretty sure the power got knocked out by the second it got hit, too. So it's also a reason why the ship was not going to stay afloat, because without electricity, the flood doors can't close because they run on electricity, which was unfortunate. And, so on to the next page of Lusitania. So, as you can see here, Lusitania, is starting to sink and all that. And the captain was trying to get Lusitania to shore before it sinks. But unfortunately, due to, the explosion, well, not just that, Lusitania actually had another explosion. And they say it had to do something maybe with the coal dust or something in the hull, in the boiler room of the ship or whatsoever, which made another big explosion, which caused so much damage that the ship started to sink so fast. And it sank almost as fast as Empress of Ireland, but this one sank in 18 minutes, so it took a little longer to sink. But just like Empress of Ireland, too many passengers have died. And out of 48 of Lusitania's lifeboats, only 6 of them were able to be launched. And you can see in the picture that Lusitania is tipping over, just like the Empress of Ireland did. So there was no way all the lifeboats would be launched. And, it's just, it was just terrible. And plus, but then, I even have watched a video about the Lusitania, about why, it was attacked. What was the reason? Was it because it was considered a warship or whatsoever? And, well, they actually, like I said a moment ago, they thought it was a warship, but actually it was not. And when the captain saw the Lusitania after they actually hit the ship with the torpedo, the captain was actually shocked. He actually realized that he and his crew had hit a passenger ship, and they realized that they were not supposed to sink it. Because, it wasn't, because all it did was had passengers on them. Well, but if I remember correctly, I think, or maybe I could be wrong, I think Lusitania did have ammunition on it, but no one really knew about it, though. I don't remember every single detail about that, but all I know is that Lusitania, was obviously a victim of the war, because, it was attacked by a German submarine, obviously. And, so the ship was sinking so fast that they couldn't make it to shore. And the captain said they have to abandon ship because they're not going to make it. The ship is going too fast, sinking too fast. And plus, the more the ship moves, then the faster the water gets pulled in. So, which is why it was sinking so fast, other than just the watertight doors not being closed. And if you look in this page right here, you can see like the Lusitania's wreckage. It's like one of the worst wreckages I've ever seen. And if you look right here, you'll even see like how the torpedo was able to hit the ship. It even tells you about the second explosion and all that. So, and people thought it was a second torpedo, but it actually wasn't, because only one torpedo has hit the ship. And the second explosion was probably from like the coal dust or something, of what they said in the book right here, or whatsoever. Well, that might be the exact answer or something, but like on some YouTube videos I've seen, like about the history of Lusitania and all these other ships, sometimes they change things up. So, I mean, well, but the fact is, I mean, it was a victim of, the war. Obviously, there's no mistake about it, because they know like what caused that ship to sink. They just don't know like exactly why the second explosion happened. So they're just taking guesses, if you know what I mean. Well, sometimes they can't make up their minds, But in reality, though, like, about the ships actually sinking, those facts are true. Like, how it happened, like, but like with Lusitania's case, for example, like, they just don't know what made the second explosion exactly. But they know that the submarine was the cause of the sinking, of course. So obviously everyone knows about that. But either, like it said in the book, it could be the coal dust that it was mixed with the explosion or whatsoever. Or it could be something else. Like maybe ammunition or something. But you never know. Alright. And here's more of the Lusitania. Like, it's just completely destroyed under the sea. It's way worse than Empress of Ireland, which is sad. And now, on to the next ship. Now this one, you probably may not have heard, but I don't know if you've heard about Titanic having two sister ships. One is called the Olympic and the Britannic. Well, feast your eyes on this. The Britannic, the hospital ship of Titanic. Now this one was also another victim of the war. And this one actually happened in November 1916, sorry. And, and they say that Britannic was actually supposed to be safer than Titanic. Well, in reality, technically yes and no, just like Titanic was. Well, despite Titanic having fewer lifeboats, that is. But Britannic had enough lifeboats and watertight compartments like Titanic did. But another thing, too, that they added was that they also added another layer of steel on the hull, which, made two layers of skin, kind of. To make the ship, be stronger. Like, it puts another protection. So that way, the Britannic was strong enough to take an iceberg and other things that it may hit. It'll still get damaged, but, it probably won't sink, though, because there's too much metal, holding together and all that. But, but just like any of the ships, though, it has sunk, of course, which is unfortunate. Now, but before I continue on with this, Britannic actually was once a passenger ship before it became a hospital ship, because it wasn't a hospital ship from the beginning. When Britannic first came out, it was used as a passenger ship, and it looked exactly like Titanic, of course. But after Titanic, sank, they added a few things to it, such as making the hull stronger and adding more lifeboats, of course. And, well, what else was there? Sorry, just give me one moment, please. know there was something else about the Britannic. Oh, well, another thing too is that, oh yeah, now I get it. Okay. So, but when, over time though, Britannic was gonna be out of service though, because they think they had no use for it as a passenger ship anymore. But when World War I started, they decided to use it again, but this time as a hospital ship. So they repainted it like this. So that way everyone out in the ocean will know that it's a hospital ship. So, and people may ask, what is a hospital ship used for anyway? Well, to answer that question, hospital ships are used for, like, traveling to other countries or to other ships out in the ocean that have people who are sick or wounded, especially during a war. And, especially if they can't make it to land in time and they need medical attention, like right now, like as soon as possible. You know what I mean? Just like, kind of like an ambulance, going into the water. Technically, that's what Britannic is, like a giant ambulance and a hospital at the same time, So, that's just how it is. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, too, is that, well, also, since Britannic was also another victim of World War I, obviously, it was also attacked by a submarine, but except it was not by a torpedo this time. Like, if you actually, look right here, well, what actually happened with Britannic this time, because when they were heading towards, land to help some wounded soldiers during the war, but when they got there, though, the ship hit something under the water, which shook the ship so badly that even the power immediately was knocked out. And, everything just stopped working except for the engine. And, and what it actually was is that it was a mine under the water. A submarine planted mines near the land, and Britannic couldn't see them. Well, especially because there were no radars in those times, and they didn't know it was there. And then, boom, it blasted a hole right in the ship. The watertight doors were still open when this happened. And unfortunately, they couldn't save this ship either. And even the captain tried to, beach the ship too, just like Lusitania did. But unfortunately, it was sinking so fast too. And Britannic sank in only 57 minutes, half the time of Titanic, unfortunately. And, had enough lifeboats for every passenger, but except 30 people have passed away during the sinking. So if I remember correctly, there was 1,165 on board, and 30 lost their lives. So just about every passenger was saved. And, so, and they were pretty much close to land anyway, so they weren't too far away to get to shore and all that. But also, because some of the passengers that died because, well, like I said, that the ship's engine was still running, the propellers were still spinning, and some of the lifeboats actually got sucked into the propellers, and the passengers got killed from that. That's why some of the passengers or doctors and nurses have died, which was what happened. And, because, they couldn't do anything else for the ship. I mean, especially because they were too focused on trying to get everyone off the ship instead of worrying about turning the engine off and all that stuff. Because the ship was sinking pretty fast. Well, it was slowly going down, like really slow. But at its final moments, like the ship actually tipped over all the way and was completely flat on its side. And, well, I'll show you that in a moment of the wreckage of it. So on this page, you will see, like, this talks about that the Britannic hit a mine. And you see that thing? That's the mine right there. And when the Britannic touched it, you know, it blows up, which made a huge hole in the ship. But another reason why Britannic sank, you know, so fast, well, not extremely fast, like it took much longer than these other first two ships I was talking about. So what happened is that, other than the watertight doors not being closed, but also, you know, obviously more than 4 compartments were flooded, especially because, like I said, well, you know, the flood doors were not closed. And another thing I found out about Britannic one time when I was watching a video of it, like how, like, they made it stronger and all that stuff, with the 2 layers of the metal on the hull, I found out that there's actually, like, they're in between each other. Like, here's one on the outside of the ship, where, you know, where the red paint you see, and the inside right here, instead of just having one full layer for both outside and inside, because Titanic only had 1 layer of metal. If you saw it in that picture of the book I had on my last video. And what happened is that the water got in between the 2 pieces of metal or whatever, and made the ship tip over like that. Even though in the picture right here, sorry, you know, that it's right at the front of the ship, but with the water going in between the hull part, you know, it's adding more weight to the ship on the side, which is making it lean over, which is why it also, you know, sank on its side like that. And, you know, because even a big ship like that can still sink fast. Oh, there was another thing I forgot to mention, is that, and also, Britannic was actually an innocent victim of the war, because I remember that, the submarines were not supposed to sink hospital ships. It was the law, you know, especially because they were used during the war. But unfortunately, not everyone follows those rules, especially if there's a war. Because, you know, not everyone follows the laws, you know. And, you know, unfortunately, Britannic was an innocent ship, you know. And then, you know, innocent lives were lost. Not much, but, you know. And well, especially because a hospital ship is important to wars and all that. For anyone, really, who needs medical attention and all that stuff. But whether the ship was an enemy or not, they still were not allowed to do that. And, you know, it's a serious thing to do. But sadly, they broke that law, and Britannic was gone. There was nothing they could do about it. Well, it's too bad. I mean, it's a beautiful ship, too. If you ask me, it's more beautiful than Titanic, in my opinion. On this page, you'll see the wreckage of Britannic. Now, you see how, like, unlike Titanic, it didn't split in 2. Well, except the part where the explosion happened right here. That's the only part that broke off of the ship. The rest of it's still all in one piece, pretty much. And, you know, and of course it's laying on its side, because that's how it sank when it hit the mine and all that. Alright, and last but not least, this one is called the Andrea. Now this one actually took place in 1956. And this one, like, unlike the ships I was talking about, this one actually, you know, had more features on it than any of the ships that I was just talking about. But I also realized about this ship is that it doesn't have as much lifeboats as the others do. Like, it only had, like, 16 lifeboats. Well, I mean, especially because it's, you know, not a huge ship. And they probably didn't need that much because there won't be a lot of people on there and all that stuff. And how this one sank had the same fate pretty much as like the Empress of Ireland did, but this time like it happened in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. With the Empress of Ireland, it sank like in the like in between like the United States and Canada, like in the river or whatever that river was called. I forgot the name of it though. Sorry. So like now, even though Andrea Doria had like a radar and like other safety features in those times, and this one hit another ship, of course. But for some reason, this one took longer to sink than Empress of Ireland for some reason. So so in this picture, you can see the Andrea Doria is leaning on its side, and only 8 of its lifeboats were able to be launched because, this side was able to let these lifeboats go, but the other side couldn't because it was tipping over. This ship right here, this is the one that hit the Andrea Doria. You can see the part right here, the front is completely crushed. The ship that hit the Andrea Doria was called the Stockholm. Now, I think it was foggy that time, if I remember correctly. And not just that, I think they were just, I don't know, maybe it was just too dark or whatsoever. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened, but even ships like Andrea Doria, even if it has a radar for something like that, an accident can still happen though, because like I said a little while ago, no matter what features a ship has, something can still happen, And, that's the whole point about this book, too, about why I'm making this video, because no matter how safe a ship is, like no matter what its size is or what features it has, a ship can still sink no matter what you do. And no matter how strong or like what safety features they have or how many lifeboats you have on your ship, it doesn't matter. That's just how it happens. And ships can even sink fast, even if they're big ones. It just depends on how bad it is and all that. And if you look on this page right here, you see that Andrea Doria is starting to tip over. And, and it submerges. So, now even though this one, hit another ship, well, actually the Stockholm was what hit the Andrea Doria. And so what happened is that even though Andrea Doria was a small ship, but for some reason, this one actually took 11 hours to actually sink. And with that amount of time, just about every passenger was saved. It'll even tell you in the book that all but 46 of the 1,706 people on board, that's how much were on board total, 1,706, and 46 died. So most people had actually survived that sinking, because if it was sinking that slow, people had enough time to get off and all that. Of course, the Stockholm was also there too to actually help the passengers that were getting away from the ship. And I think, since it was there, the passengers that couldn't use the lifeboats on the left side of the ship because it was tipping over, I'm sure the lifeboats probably had to go back and forth to get the rest of the passengers off or so when the ship was sinking and all that. And just like with Britannic, it sinked on its side, of course, because you'll see it in this next page right here. And but for a ship like that, it's actually still in good shape for a shipwreck like that. Yeah, but like any ship though, it's still sad seeing it like that though. And, well, so the point is that no matter how well you try to make something safer, whether it's a ship, a train, or an airplane, a car, it doesn't matter how safe they can be. Because something can still happen. Accidents can still happen, or like a sinking, a fire, or whatever. Anything like that can happen. And, you know, this video would, and I hope this video would be helpful to help people understand that, you know, just because Titanic actually was supposed to be unsinkable, that doesn't actually mean it'll sink. So that happens with the other ships. Because, you know, like, no matter what you do, you know, because it's not like a ship is indestructible. You know, it's never going to break or, like, never explode or whatsoever, because they're just like anything, especially because they run on electricity and steam, and those can even make fires if something goes wrong. So, you can't expect, you know, a ship to be perfectly safe, just like anything can be. Well, I hope that this video was very helpful, and I hope you enjoyed, you know, watching the video and seeing these beautiful ships on my book and all that. And if anyone has any questions about these lost ships, please feel free to, you know, ask me any questions in the comment below on my YouTube channel. But as always, be polite and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you and have a great night.